So we are back with a brand new movie on What If Naruto Bridged Worlds with Heroic Deeds Young Justice movie, but before we start, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now let's begin the story. They retaliated. After all this time. After everything his clan did. After every slight made against them, the gods had decided enough was enough and deemed them no longer worth the punishment of the isolation they have been subject to for generations. Staring up at the sky, he watched as the sun fell from its place in the heavens. The heat intense, he could feel the shirt on his back quite literally melting and burning his shoulders. Screams from his fellow clan's members filled his ears, some falling into cracks in the ground, appearing from the seismic activity caused by the sun, bearing its power down upon them. His mother kneeling next to him, pushing into his arms a large pot. Saying something he couldn't quite hear, overwhelmed by the sheer enormity of what's happening right now. He could do nothing except stand stupefied by the sight. Rooted to the spot in front of the display of power the gods used to smite his family. Clutching the ceramic pot closer to his chest. His mother wrapping her arms around him, barely registered over the blisters caused by the heat, he held his breath as the light of the sun took away all vision. Bathing everything in an all-encompassing white light. That's when he awoke with a gasp. Hall of Justice. Basement area. 10th January 2010. 4:04 Eastern Standard Time. He was found originally washed up on Baker Beach, San Francisco 2 days ago. The Coast Guard that found him called emergency services who transported him to the closest hospital. Explained a darkly dressed man. He was staring through a window into a rather bare room holding a single occupant. His gaze made all the more intense by the wide-eyed dark-colored cowl that covered most of his head, with 2 points on top, which one could mistake for ears almost. Then why is he here, Bruce? This being asked by another man, arms crossed across his broad muscle chest, covered in a blue bodysuit with a red cape trailing behind him. He also was looking through the window at the blonde teen that is sitting on the lone bed inside the room, having just woke up and breathing deeply. Concern overwhelmed him, the boy inside the room had quite obviously had a nightmare from what the blue-covered man could see. Looking to the now named Bruce, the man leveled him with a look. I know you well enough that you wouldn't have brought a frightened child to the hall without a reason. Bruce looked to the red-caped man, taking a moment to consider not only his words, but also the use of his name so casually. Deciding to dismiss it, Bruce looked back to the blonde, seeing that he had just got his breathing under control. After arriving at the hospital, it was originally believed he was a local that swam out too far until the doctors and nurses were unable to administer medical aid. All their equipment indicated he was running a fever, heart beating at a rate of 20 beats per minute, and when they tried to administer an IV drip, none of their equipment could penetrate his skin. Despite this, under observation he seemed perfectly fine. Even with everything saying he should have been dying. His concern for the distressed teen getting the better of him, the caped man interrupted Bruce. Would that mean the boy has powers? Is that what you're implying, Bruce? Then we'll provide help, the League can help get him accustomed to. Understanding the caped man is just concerned for the boy, yet wanting to actually explain the situation, Bruce interrupted this time. When he returned to consciousness, Superman, the boy reduced the entire ED of the hospital he was in to rubble, injuring the doctors attempting to assist him, but also managing to cut power to the whole building. Forcing the immediate transfer of terminal patients to other hospitals so they could continue to receive treatment. We were lucky Green Lantern was close by in Coast City and able to contain the boy before he could cause more destruction. Hearing that, Superman pursed his lips. Knowing Bruce, he wouldn't just let that be ignored, but Superman could quite clearly see the boy was troubled by something and knew that he needed all the help he could get. Running a hand through his black hair, Superman turned fully to Bruce. Does that mean you want to imprison him? He obviously needs help, not to be locked up. Where's his family? Maybe we can talk to them about setting up a system to help the boy adjust to what his life will be like now. Seeing that he won't be able to get through to Superman, Bruce walked closer to the window to observe the boy, his own long cape swishing behind him as he does. He observes as the blonde starts to look about the room, finding nothing in it bar the bed he awoke in, and 3 of the walls had mirrors spanning the whole wall that he was being watched through. That's another problem entirely. The boy's a ghost. I've had a program search every known database looking for anyone matching his description. Came back with nothing. Not even a name. Might be easier if he gave us one, but he hasn't said a word since Lantern brought him here to be contained. Knowing Bruce Batman as well as he did, Superman knew that Batman, despite no change at all in his voice, is rather frustrated at his lack of information on the boy. And that meant the boy had been in that room, all alone and, while the Dark Knight surveilled him to find out anything he could. Have you tried talking to him? Stepping up next to Batman, Superman also observed the blonde. The boy had stood up now and made his way to the one-way window. No, I haven't. Couldn't be sure how he'd react. If he'd attack me or try to escape. Also doesn't help he's been asleep since Lantern stopped him. Which is why I called you in, he seemed to have stirred earlier. So, I planned to talk to him once I got you up to speed. I appreciate that, Bruce, I really do. Superman turned and put a hand on Batman's shoulder. But after seeing him and you telling me his situation, I would like to talk to him myself. We don't know what sort of trouble he's been in, though it's obvious he's scared and alone, and I don't think you interrogating him will help anyone, least of all the boy. Giving a side glance to the hand on his shoulder, Batman regarded Superman calmly. We don't know what sort of threat he poses. He could be a spy for the League of Shadows. Discovering whether he is or not should be priority, Clark. A spy for the Shadows? That sounds rather far-fetched, Bruce. Washing up on a beach, destroying a hospital. Doesn't sound like their usual MO, especially if they were trying to infiltrate the League. Not to mention holding him inside the Hall of Justice if that's your main worry. Their tactics are always changing. Nothing is too far-fetched. And the cells below the hall is the only place that could hold him short of the Batcave and the Watchtower, along with not carrying much info, should he escape and prove to be after the information we have. Superman crossed his arms at hearing that, taking a deep breath to calm himself as well. This is just how Batman is. Suspicious of everyone until literally everything points to the opposite. You need to start being more trusting, Bruce. Not everything is a ploy by our enemies to attack us. I believe this boy just needs a helping hand. And I want to give it to him. Before the two could carry on their argument, the third person in the room with them whose presence they had been neglecting spoke up. If you two are quite done with your lover's spat, I believe it best I talk with our guest. The two men turned, the one who spoke being a woman with black hair and wearing a predominantly red, blue and gold outfit. Batman and Superman also saw that if not for the wall separating them, the blonde and woman would be nose to nose. It seemed as though the blonde in the room knew the woman was there, looking right at her. It gave both men an odd sensation. Since the idea behind three walls having one-way glass was that even if they knew it wasn't a mirror, the person on the inside wouldn't be able to tell which one they were being watched from. Yet this boy was looking the woman right in the eyes. 10th January 2010. 4:05 Eastern Standard Time. Pulling himself up into a sitting position, having been ripped from his sleep by the abrupt end of the nightmare he had been experiencing, the blonde boy swung his legs out of the bed he found himself in. Bringing hands to his knees, the boy squared his shoulders, closed his eyes and took a deep breath. In. Out. In. Out. With each breath he could feel his rapidly beating heart slowing down, closer and closer to the point he could no longer hearing it thumping in his ears. The shaking his body felt, tremors resulting from reliving what the blonde knew to be a memory, the realism of the whole thing too much for him to simply hope it was just a bad dream. In. Out. In. Out. More breaths. Each one getting the shaking under control. Shoulders no longer trembling, hands clenched into fists, gripping the black pants he wore tight enough to turn his knuckles white, now that he could only feel it in his palms. Which made him notice how clammy his hands felt. Realizing he had been sweating, the blonde now took notice of the cold sweat not only trailing down his shirtless back, but also dripping off his brow. The main thing he could remember was the heat. He could almost feel it sizzling his skin even now. Bringing a hand to his shoulder, the blonde released a sigh at not feeling the blisters he could feel forming on his skin. He could almost see the fire behind his closed eyelids. Just a phantom feeling from the memory. Just his mind unable to separate the past from reality. Taking one last shaky breath, the blonde stood up off the bed. Opening his eyes and the first thing he saw was his reflection staring back at him. His blonde hair looks a bit spikier than he remembered, almost like he had been electrocuted with how it now defied gravity. Walking closer, he looked closely at his body. The training he had been doing most of his life had made him rather fit, but all the muscles on his upper body looked more defined. The blonde for sure knew he didn't have visible abs before. He didn't like it. Dragging his gaze away from the mirror, the blonde took stock of the room he was in. Single bed that he was obviously sleeping in. Blanket and pillow on top. The frame was metal, which was strange to the blonde since the only beds he had seen were made with wood. Other than that, there was nothing in the room. There were also 3 mirrors total spanning each wall, except the one the bed was pushed up against. Something about the one to his left drew his attention. Gaze narrowing, the blonde walked closer to the mirror that had his attention now. Focusing towards the side of the mirror, towards the corner of the room. He couldn't explain it. It felt familiar, which is strange because he couldn't say he used to feel things. He stepped closer. Close enough to touch the mirror. It was stronger now, like a buzz in the back of his mind. He knew this feeling. This sensation he had only felt once before. It was different, muted almost in comparison, but it was the same. The same feel the sun gave off when it fell from the sky. Flexing his fist, the blonde looked to the wall, just on the other side was the feeling. Not moving, just there. He then looked where halfway up the mirror started. Specifically, the frame. Looking back down at his hands, the blonde felt like he had an idea that was dumb, but was going to try it anyway. On the other side of the wall. Wonder Woman, stand back. We don't know the extent of what he's capable of. Batman said. He could see the boy was planning something. The Dark Knight could only make assumptions on how, but the boy knew exactly where they were and he looked to be preparing to do something. Stepping up next to Wonder Woman, Superman looked bad at Batman. You just need to have more faith, Bruce. Before more could be said, the boy moved. Hands raising, digging grooves into the wall where he gripped it and ripped the wall apart. Creating a hole large enough for the blonde to see all three people that had been observing him. He never took his eyes off of Wonder Woman though. Staring daggers into the Amazon's sharp blue eyes with his own of a darker shade. That room was designed to hold Bane. Batman lamented, mentally noting that this boy's strength level was rather great. Which meant he'd have to either avoid or roll with the punches if a fight broke out. Now that this had happened, he'd have to bank on Wonder Woman or Superman to either resolve the situation or stop the boy if the situation dissolved into a scuffle. Anata wa watasha nakazoku naij bunda megami obasimasendashita ka. Have you not punished my family enough, goddess? The blonde asked. Causing both Batman and Superman to glance at one another. Having both studied many languages in their life, they quite easily picked up the boy speaking Japanese. Wonder Woman though never broke eye contact with the boy. She understood of course, living as long as she had, traveling the world. One picks up many a language, even a few that were no longer spoken. Raising her arm to motion to the others to stay back, Wonder Woman. Watashi wa megamide wa arimasen. Watashitachi wa nadanai gai ga nai kodo o I mishimasu. Wadashidacheta sukatai dakadesu. I am no goddess. We mean you no harm. We only wish to help. She responded without missing a beat. Soradiwa anatahadiradesu ka. HMHM wa wakarimasenga anadanai wa magami no sans I ga aramasu. Who are you then? I don't know how, but you have the presence of a goddess. The boy at the Amazon's response looked to relax slightly, going by the fact his muscles no longer looked so tense. Batashi wa Diana. Nami okaiite mo plus dezu ka. I am Diana. May I ask your name? Diana said with what she hoped to be a friendly smile. Finally breaking eye contact, deeming Wonder Woman to not be an enemy, the boy looked to the two men in the room. Both fighters from the looks of them, along with Diana. The tall muscled man in the blue suit, he had the same smile as Diana had. The dark one, with the pointy ears. His ready stance showed his distrust of how he was ready at a moment's notice for an attack. While not liking this man was ready to attack at the slightest provocation, the blonde could appreciate it. Looking to Diana once more, the blonde took a deep breath. He can see that he was in a strange place, with strange people. These people dressed strangely, this Diana had a strange name, the way she spoke was the only familiar thing so far. Making eye contact once more with Diana, the blonde had many thoughts going through his head. Chief among them being how'd he get to be here? He remembered the floating green guy, fighting him after escaping from that sterile-smelling rock building. Those other strange people were holding him in, who were trying to stick him with tiny blades. They even spoke what sounded like gibberish to the blonde. The green guy was awkward to fight, being able to fly made it difficult for the blonde to punch him. Nevertheless, he got in a good few before green guy surrounded him in a sphere made of the green energy he was using to fly and fight. Passing out shortly after from not being able to breathe. They could have moved him while unconscious though. But he's getting off track, this not a goddess said they want to help. The blonde weighed the pros and cons in his head. He could attempt to escape, find out where he is, and try to make his way home to salvage what he could. Find out whether anyone survived. He could rebuild. It never hurts to ask for help. The blonde could hear the words in his ear, his mother's voice, reminding him he could always try his luck with these people. Diana offered help. He doesn't know these people, no idea what they do or what they are capable of. What support they could offer. For all he knows they are already aware of what happened to his family, whether his family survived or not. And that would be so much easier than fighting his way out of here. Nodding to himself, the blonde made up his mind. He returned the smiles he received from Diana and the blue man, a bright grin lighting up his face. Uzumaki Naruto. Hajime. Nice to meet you. He said with a small bow to the most notable members of the Justice League. Undisclosed location. May 17. 1733, EDT. Not many believe that their favorite heroes have a giant satellite orbiting the Earth. Sounds like something those conspiracy theorists come up with, no. Because why would the people that put on colorful suits, cracking the skulls of their local criminals, also have a Big Brother satellite monitoring their every move? Not only that, but that all those heroes you see flying around. Government plans to make the populace complacent in their lives. According to those same theorists. Doesn't help Batman feeds those theories. The best way to hide the truth from the masses is most often fake news. And what better way to hide the existence of a satellite like theirs than to help the people convince themselves it either doesn't exist or that it's the ramblings of some internet troll who only uses self-gathered rainwater to drink because they think pipe water has chemicals fed into the pipes. Joke's on them, Amanda Waller already had it changed so that the government additives were introduced in gaseous form to the atmosphere. So, they're drinking in it anyway. Anyways, the focus right now is not actually the watchtower. It's actually a place even more secret, if you would believe, than even the Justice League hidden satellite. The Batcave. While misinformation is great in hiding things from the public, no information is even better. Which is what makes the Batcave one of the only sanctuaries Batman can truly claim. Inside the Batcave is a large spacious cavern of bare rock and metal support frames to prevent collapse. A number of floodlights and spotlights dotted the walls and walkways, providing artificial light where natural light could not reach. A metal platform located in the center is the main area of operations, holding a very large and very powerful computer designed by Batman himself. One can also find on the platform a lab bench with all the lab equipment one might use in a high-finance science class or use to perform forensic analysis. The true center of attention though would have to be a set of steps that lead down to a lower platform where the infamous Batmobile can be seen, ready to go at a moment's notice. A vehicle that is more high-tech tank than an actual car. The scourge of many getaway drivers in Gotham. Lastly, the cave has its own Zeta 2 platform. The Justice League's top secret way of teleporting its many heroes around the country. At the main computer, aptly named the Bat Computer though that tidbit is to Robin's knowledge only, sat Batman. Typing away as he listened to Wonder Woman beside him talk. I still feel he hasn't revealed everything about both himself and what happened. Naruto, I believe, has come to trust me a good deal, especially considering I've helped him adjust to life off of the island his family were isolated on. But he still seems to have reservations about letting me in. Wonder Woman crossed her arms and pursed her lips when she finished. Rather frustrated that the blonde she had taken under her wing essentially didn't trust her enough to let know his inner thoughts. Batman listened silently, tapping away at the keyboard in front of him. Leaving Wonder Woman to reflect on the reason she was here in the Batcave. After having explained to Naruto that they simply wished to help him, they had taken him to one of the conference rooms in the Hall of Justice that didn't have public access. The blonde had proceeded to tell them of himself, Naruto Uzumaki, of the clan of the same name. How, in a shocking parallel to Diana, his family lived on an island. Isolated from the world by the gods. Unable to leave and no able to reach the island due to the massive whirlpools that surrounded it. They were lucky enough fish were able to make it past the eddies and they learned to farm many foods. This was all until one day the sun dropped from the sky and destroyed everything he had known. Naruto knew not how he survived, nor how he ended up at what he now knows to be Baker Beach. So he had said at least. Batman, Superman and Wonder Woman knew he withheld information. Even so they figured he'd tell them when he was ready. That was 4 months ago. Naruto hadn't necessarily told them much more, so they've had to do their own digging. Using the observational equipment of the watchtower and reports of sudden extreme weather changes, they had been able to get the location of the island Naruto had told them of. Wonder Woman glanced at the massive screen before her, focusing on the satellite image they had gotten. Based on what Naruto had told them of his home, Batman had created a rough estimation of the island's layout. From Batman's projections and what Naruto did share of his family, the Uzumaki were a few hundred strong. But the island wasn't an island anymore. It was scorched earth taken to the extreme. What had been sand around the coast of the island was now glass, yet the heat that melted the sand and made it glass was great enough it burned the glass and made it black and shattered it all over. If there had been buildings and other structures, they were no longer there as they had been melted and burned, everything reduced to soot and even that burned. It was hard to believe Naruto had survived somehow. What about his behavior? How is he adapting? Ripped from her thoughts by Batman's question, Diana turned to see Batman looking at her. Oh, right. Naruto still struggles knowing he's the only survivor, it weighs on him sometimes. That everyone he's ever known is no longer part of this world. Wonder Woman paused. Batman's near-silent typing filling her ears as she thought of her next words. He spends most of his time learning, having rejected the offer to have it implanted into his mind by Martian Manhunter. Naruto has taken well to reading English, though he does still have trouble with putting it into practice. He has been getting bored lately, learning to speak English no longer seems to interest him as much anymore and would much rather do anything else. Some social cues escape him still, but I know from experience those will come with time. He's taken a real liking to Captain Marvel, they've become fast friends. Their friendship is a step in the right direction. I think it means Naruto is opening up. Not just to me because I provide him housing, but because he wants to move forward with his life. Batman nodded. He still had his reservations about the blonde. He could say for sure now that there wasn't a spy of any sort. Not only had he bugged the Uzumaki kid, all research he had done into him had yielded nothing. Only a personal visit to Ra's al Ghul had been enough to subside his worries that the boy was working for the shadows. The demon head's reaction to the name Uzumaki had been interesting though. While Ra's didn't say anything, Batman was sure he knew more. The Dark Knight would find out more later. All that didn't mean the Uzumaki didn't have his own agenda, which is why Batman was having Wonder Woman inform him of things like these. He couldn't leave up to faith that the blonde had no ulterior motive. It just wasn't in Batman's nature, unlike Superman and Wonder Woman. What about his powers? Fawcett City. May 17. 1622, CTT. Glamorous. Good. Next one. Clock. Okay, that was a bit of an easy one. Let's try something a bit harder. Let me see here. Atop an apartment building in Fawcett City, Naruto can currently be found sitting atop a fold-out lawn chair. Dressed in some new clothes of an orange t-shirt, black pants and some plain sneakers. Head leaned on his palm as he stared rather bored-like at the man across from him, who is currently helping him practice speaking this English most everyone on this massive island country he has to remind himself speaks. The man himself is very large in comparison to Naruto. If asked, the blonde would say he had the same build as Superman. That is to say broad-shouldered, massive biceps, muscles all over and a chiseled jawline. Naruto doesn't understand this country's idea of physical fitness and why having massive muscles equates to being fit and healthy. He won't question it though, this Captain Marvel, Shazam or the Big Red Cheese as the man told him he was called once, he was kind. Naruto liked him, found him funny and enjoyable to spend time with. Or as Shazam calls it hang out. They'd have to question his choice of dress though. Naruto has never seen him not wearing that red bodysuit with a thunderbolt on the chest. The gold sash, boots and armlets are a bit gaudy, Naruto believes is the right word. That hooded white cape is pretty awesome though. Sitting on a wooden crate, Captain Marvel is currently shuffling his way through a deck of cue cards that had words on them for Naruto to read and then practice the pronunciation. Hold on, almost found a good one. Shazam said, looking to Naruto seeing he was starting to find more interest in staring into space. The buff man started looking through the cards a bit faster. Sighing, Naruto rolled his eyes and leaned back in his chair. Head hanging off the back of the chair as he stared up at the clouds in the sky. Do we have to? We have been what is the word? Wrench wrench. We practice for hour now. Can we not do something more fun? Hearing that, Captain Marvel stopped looking altogether. Instead directing his attention to Naruto. This was your idea remember? You came to me with this. I know. I was hoping you would be bored fast, then we leave to do something fun. Shazam couldn't help throwing the cards in the air in exasperation. You could have said that from the start. Like you said. We've been here an hour. An hour. To be honest I didn't really want to help, but I did because I thought you'll regret later not being a good friend. Now what I regret is not saying no because I just wasted an hour of my life on ... The Big Red Cheese trailed off as he realized something. He gave the Uzumaki a blank look. You already know how to say all these words don't you? The blonde just gave him friend a mischievous grin. Ah. You're infuriating. Would you like to make things back Yuhatsu Suru? Relieve stress. The mightiest mortal shot the blonde a curious look. Make things what? Oh, sorry. Make things go boom. At that, Naruto held up his right hand. An arc of electricity sparked from his palm to accentuate his point. Sticking his finger out, a bolt shot out at an empty metal can that was sitting on the far side of the roof. Not only did the can burst apart like a balloon, a large crack sounded out across the rooftop. Dude. I told my uncle there'd be no more lightning blasts up here. I'm gonna be in so much trouble. He mumbled to himself at the end, hand coming up to cover his mouth at the horror of realizing that. We need to go, blowing things up sounds fun, but we need to go somewhere people won't be hurt and somewhere my uncle won't find out. Shazam whispered at the end. It was strange to Naruto, who was looking at Captain Marvel with a raised eyebrow, that his obviously very powerful friend was always so worried about what his uncle said and does. He shrugged it off though, Naruto was sure his mother is scaring Shinigami senseless right now in Yomi. Either way, both Shazam and Naruto simultaneously stood up and began floating off the roof. With Naruto following Shazam's lead as the white-caped man knew the city better than him. As they started picking up speed, Naruto began to think of how he came to know the hero that is Shazam. Actually, thinking about it, he wouldn't know this friendly giant of a man if it wasn't for his own powers. The most obvious to the blonde had been his dramatic increase in strength. Having ripped a hole in a wall he was later told was heavily reinforced was the biggest giveaway. He's still adjusting to it, constantly using more strength than intended and breaking something. Luckily Diana has not found out he broke her favorite mug yet. The ability to fly and produce lightning came about around the same time. Diana had volunteered to provide shelter for him, saying something about having been through a similar situation. In the first few days of living with the Amazon princess, it had been agreed on that Naruto would learn English so he could communicate with everyone a bit easier since he had been told everyone didn't speak the same language as him. One day, he was sat in front of this thing called a laptop. Attempting to use it resulted in Naruto getting very frustrated and inadvertently used his new ability to generate lightning to fry the laptop to a crisp. The broody man, Batman, they called him, has since banned him from using any technology more complicated than a television remote. With the discovery of his ability to use lightning, Shazam had been asked to teach him how to control it. Being a hero with a similar ability to generate lightning. So that Naruto and anyone around him are not accidentally injured by a ruse blast of lightning. Naruto remembers how excited his friend had been when they were introduced. Not only how fast he was talking, but how fast Shazam was zipping around the room they had been in. The Uzumaki boy didn't know people could move that fast. They made good progress rather quickly. Shazam had been very eager to teach someone, to share what he had learned in the use of his own powers. Calling upon the lightning had been the first lesson, moderating the output the second. As shown, Shazam had taught Naruto how to fire off blasts at things. It was a struggle not to just randomly shoot a stray spark at things. It was just so fun. In his moment of reminiscing, Naruto wobbled in his flight for a second. Reminding the blonde that while he could fly now, it was still something he was learning to do. Having only found out he even could just a few weeks ago. Flashback. Anata wa watashi ga tobu kodo ga dekiru ka dm kamarubikita to amamasu ka. You think I should see if I can fly? Naruto asked Shazam. They were standing on the rooftop of the apartment building Shazam called home, close to the edge of the roof and on the other side metal cans. For Naruto to aim at while Shazam taught him how to aim his lightning blasts. While the wisdom of Solomon helped Shazam understand and speak many languages, it's still up to him to interpret the words. So, Shazam threw Naruto a confused look. Did the blonde ask something about his ability to fly? I guess. Anyway, aim for the one in the middle, without hitting the other cans this time. Patch of ground too close. Yeah, sure. Shazam had moved over to the cans to move them closer together. To give Naruto more of a challenge. Wait, catch. Then the blonde's words hit him. He shot up straight and nearly gave himself whiplash looking to the spot Naruto used to be. Oh, no. Moving fast enough to make a bullet jealous, Shazam only made it over the edge of the roof before stopping. Where Naruto seemed to be what looked like inches from face planting on the sidewalk. He watched as the blonde floated a little higher shakily, then flipped over to face Shazam. A wide grin on his face. Captain Marvel returned that grin with a scowl. You nearly gave me a heart attack. End of flashback. Shazam still holds a grudge over him doing that. Naruto blames his mother. She had always been one for extreme methods. I guess that rubbed off on me, Naruto mused. Finding out he had powers was nice. Being able to do things he previously wasn't able to. It was great. Amazing even. Downside being the Batman likes to question if Naruto knew their origin. Where they came from. He had ideas, of course. Based on what happened before Goddess melted his family and home, but Naruto wasn't going to share those with Batman. Flying a bit more, Naruto observed the landscape as him and the Justice Leaguer flew above the many houses and buildings. It's still rather daunting to know that so many people live here. 4 of these blocks that they gather and live on has near enough the same amount of people as his clan when they were still alive. It was crazy. Crazier still that there's hundreds of blocks and that's in this city alone. Sadly, having lived in this society for a short time, Naruto has noticed that with so many people, so many different personalities that things like stealing and violence for the sake of violence are very prominent. Very different to being back on the island with his clan. Perfect example being right now. They were flying past what Shazam had previously called a strip mall and the red-clad man had stopped mid-air because they heard a rather loud bang. Which Naruto had also been told such a sound was a gunshot. We need to help. Is all Shazam said before zooming down to the source of the shot. What do you mean we? Naruto mumbled before following after him. Staying back where he hopes people won't see him and choosing to observe, Naruto looked around to see what the situation is like. The sign he can see says pawn shop. At the sound of the gunshot most of the people had scattered and ran away and he can see Shazam standing rather imposingly in the shattered bay window the shop had at the front. Staring down 3 men dressed in all black clothes and wearing masks based on the 3 people he had first interacted with. Batman, Superman and Wonder Woman. All were pointing their weird gun contraptions at Shazam, even with the 2 in the Superman and Batman masks, not able to keep their hands from shaking like leaves in hurricane. You all know who I am. You know that you cannot hurt me with those. I strongly suggest you put those down and turn yourselves in before anyone actually does get hurt. The 2 nervous masked men glanced at each other. They really didn't want to give Captain Marvel a reason to hurt them. Wonder Woman had convinced them it would be an easy job. Wonder Woman was their friend who had recently got out after being busted and they had needed the money. In out, no consequences. Batman and Superman had only agreed because they had needed some quick income too. This was so not worth it anymore. Not with a super person interfering now. Beginning to put their guns down, both were startled by the panicked cry that came from Wonder Woman. Which is weird to think because a quite obviously male voice could be heard. I'm not going back. No. I don't care who you are. We're either getting out of here or not at all. With that, Wonder Woman raised their gun and started firing randomly. Spraying bullets in an arc, a crazy strategy brought on by the panicked craze Wonder Woman was suffering right now. Shazam burst forward. Most bullets impacting his chest and bouncing harmlessly to the ground. One or two buried themselves into the wall. But several Naruto could see from his vantage point in the air flew into the open. Right where a woman with dark red hair, who had been hiding behind a cement support pillar, was running to what she had thought to be safety, now that their local hero, Captain Marvel, was here. In the future, if asked, he would tell them he doesn't know. His body just moved. He had been asked before if he'd apply his new gifts to helping people, much like his red friend and the rest of the Justice League did. His answer had been a firm no. The blonde didn't feel any obligation to help the people of this country in any way. He did plan to return the kindness shown by the heroes of the Justice League though. But this time, seeing this woman's red hair stirred something in Naruto. Even with his new powers and abilities the blonde has been displaying these last few months, Naruto hadn't known he could move this fast. Fast enough he was now standing over the woman, just in time for the bullets to hit him in the back. He barely felt them impact his skin, putting holes in his orange shirt. Too focused on looking at the woman. Long red hair was what drew his eye the most. Looking to her face, Naruto could see the purple color of his mother's eyes, the same proud and loving look she always gave him when he was around her. The happy smile on her lips. Naruto would swear his mother was in front of him right now. As if her death was a figment of his imagination. "Yo, you saved my life. Oh my god, you saved my life," the woman cried. It had taken her a second to figure out what happened, why this blonde kid had knocked her over. But having heard and seen the bullets drop and bounce along the ground, she realized he had taken the bullets for her. Blinking a few times, the image of his mother disappeared. Instead, the lady's face was what he was looking at. Her eyes brown and framed by glasses. Her hair even an off-blood shade of red compared to his mother's. Didn't even look to be a real hair color. Looking at her once more. Naruto doesn't even know why he thought it was his mother in the first place. Thinking she was here in front of him was his true imagination at work. Suddenly finding himself enveloped in a hug took him by surprise. Naruto wasn't sure what to do. It was his first hug since the day his home was smote from the planet. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," the woman reiterated, letting go and running away right after. Yes. You're welcome," he mumbled, turning away from where the woman ran off to hide the fact he was embarrassed she had hugged him, the warm tingly feeling it brought forth, and more than that, he felt shame that he had mistaken this woman for his dead mother. Quickly floating his way closer to Captain Marvel. Naruto could see a gun snapped in half on the floor and the Wonder Woman being held up in the air by the collar of his shirt. The other two had placed their guns on the ground and were now on their knees and hands behind their heads. Doing everything they can to not provoke the big red man. "May we go now? I wish to return home. Kangaroo Kodo got Akusen Aramasu. I have much to think about." Naruto remained floating off the ground a short distance from Shazam. Arms crossed loosely and looking anywhere but at his friend. Even with the blonde not looking his way, Captain Marvel can't see the look on Naruto's face. He knows the look. Taking a second, Captain Marvel nodded. He could hear the police cars in the distance, so they would be able to deal with the thieves that were unfortunate Naruto and himself had been flying past. Using the man's own belt to restrain Wonder Woman, Shazam looked to Superman and Batman. "Any funny business before the police get here and I come back to parade you in the streets in your tidy whities?" "Got it." Both men nodded frantically. Shazam turned to his friend. "Okay, we can go now." Naruto nodded appreciatively. Washington, D.C. May 17, 2010, EDT. Diana couldn't be sure what to expect when Naruto had asked to talk to her. In her time as the blonde's caretaker he hadn't asked much of her. He had been largely self-sufficient in his time with her. To be honest, the first few weeks Naruto didn't say much of anything. Even more so when they had moved him from the Hall of Justice and the blonde saw the city for the first time while traveling to Diana's apartment in Washington. She had just gotten home and gone to change into more comfortable clothes. Sweatpants and a random red shirt she had. Walking out from her room, Diana saw Naruto sitting on the sofa of the living room. He was sat forward, resting his elbows on his knees and hands clasped in front of his mouth. Walking around to be able to see him better, bare feet padding along the wooden floor, Diana could see the look on Naruto's face better. His blue eyes unfocused, not even noticing her walk in front of him. Something seemed to be on his mind. Something that had him so deep in thought he was ignoring the world around him. Diana moved forward, taking a seat on the coffee table in front of Naruto. She raised a hand to his shoulder and shook him. "What seems to be on your mind, Naruto?" Naruto blinked, slowly looking to the Amazon woman that had taken him in. Jostled from his thoughts from her shaking. Her question taking a moment to process in his mind. "A lot is on my mind, Diana. Koko ni Takata, glad you're here, I require you for advice." His expression guarded. Knowing what he does, Naruto was hoping that Diana could help him sort out his thoughts. Wrapping her hands around his, Diana looked Naruto in the eye. To show she was taking this seriously. He wanted her advice, from the look in his eye, it would be about something very troubling to the blonde. "Tell me what troubles you so, I will help however I can." He took a deep breath to steady his nerves, ones he didn't realize he had right now. Why did this suddenly become so hard? It wasn't like he was going to ask the woman some world-ending question. In the effort of easing into it then, Naruto settled on an easier topic of discussion. Something related to what he truly wanted to talk to Diana about and also being something Naruto now found himself curious about. "Why do you be a hero?" "I'm not sure what you mean." Mulling it over, Naruto decided on different words to express what he means. "Why protect the people? Put yourself in the way of harm for others?" The Diana, that wasn't a hard question to answer at all. She smiled as she answered. "To change the world." Furrowing his brow, Naruto voiced his confusion. "Change the world? How?" "As you said, putting myself in harm's way is just one. My favorite example is, years ago I had helped free a village and Wanda being ravaged by a local warlord. At the time the people of the village lived in constant fear of the warlord and his men. Food limited, water even more so. Children being taken away to work in mines because their small bodies could reach where adult could not. All around struggling to survive under this warlord's thumb. I heard word of it from a friend in the military and set out to free them immediately. I shall admit, I was new to being a hero as you put it at the time and had thought that by simply defeating the warlord and his men would have them leave the village alone, like it was for raiders in ancient Greece. But they didn't, did they?" Naruto interjected. Diana shook her head, a small smile actually appearing on her face. "No, weeks after my visit let's say, the warlord was going to return and was planning to raze the village to the ground. As retribution for my actions. It was a cowardly action and driven by his fear of me, and he was going to harm the people I defended because he couldn't return the pain I inflicted upon him. My friend had got word they were on the move back to the village, so I returned to the village as well. Fighting wasn't the answer this time though. It would have only continued the cycle of misery the warlord was causing. So, I had offered to submit to any punishment the warlord dare inflict in return for his word the village be left alone." Encapsulated by the story, Naruto had to ask as Diana paused. "Did he give his word?" Once more Diana shook her head. "No, instead the villagers saw me standing between them and the warlord. Offering myself to free them from the warlord's clutches. A little girl had run between our standoff, putting herself between the warlord and I demanding he leave and let everyone love in peace. The other villagers saw that too. Inspired by the bravery of a child took up arms against their oppressors. And like any bully, the warlord and his men gave up not only their ideas of revenge against me, but also their fear-mongering ways now that their victims are standing up to them." Very inspirational story. I truly believe that. But I am skeptic of how this relates to being hero, Naruto stated. His troubled thoughts pushed to the wayside for the moment to understand the point of Diana's story. Diana only continued to smile. "Firstly, I believe the word you were looking for was skeptic. Secondly, the reason for being a hero is different for everyone. My reason, that is for putting myself in harm's way for others, is for people like that little girl in my story. The one that stood up to the warlord." "Yes. The girl. Nia is her name. Then she stood up against a warlord. Inciting the rest of her village to do the same. Today she is the head of a charity organized to provide help to villages like hers. Food and water delivered to any that need it, also doing everything they can to reunite children with the families they were taken from. If I hadn't done that. If I had not intervened, Nia would most likely be dead. Dozens, hundreds of other people dead also because they wouldn't have received the help Nia now gets them access to because she wouldn't have been alive to help." Diana stood up. Very impassioned about the reason she risks her life for others every day. "And that's why I do this, Naruto. By saving and inspiring others, they will in turn do the same. Until there is no longer a need to." Naruto nodded at that. Smiling a bit. That sounded nice. He could definitely stand for reasons like that. Reminded him of Captain Marvel in a way. The big cheese from what he has seen and been told by his friend, he always left violence as the last answer, always another way. Always trying to get ne'er-do-wells to change their ways before putting a fist in their face. That there was always a chance to do the right thing. And knowing this, knowing why Captain Marvel fights crime, knowing why Diana involves herself in conflict, it helps Naruto understand the way he has been feeling lately. It helps him come to terms with what he wants to tell Diana. And hopefully Captain Marvel down the line. But he owed it to Diana more, seeing as she was the one to take him in. I see. Thank you for telling me. Risking yourself so others can achieve something great is admirable. Something happened this day, something that has made me change mind about using my abilities the way you do, about being a hero. Naruto told Diana. Looking to the side as he thought of the words he wanted to use. She sat down once more. To be more eye level with Naruto. He wanted to tell her something important. She could tell. It would help if she wasn't standing over him like she was. So, Diana waited patiently. The start I guess would be to tell you about Watashi Nakazoku. Uzumaki Ichizoku. My family. The Uzumaki clan, Naruto said. What I will tell you, having lived with you and coming to know what you stand for, it not be something I can be entirely proud of anymore. Diana could see the troubled look return to his eyes. As he paused, Naruto looked Diana square in the eye. And I trust you to keep between us. The vulnerability Naruto showed right now was palpable to Diana. It almost came off of him like an aura. In the few months she had known the blonde, he had always been rather closed about his life. He never shared much about his family or what his life was like living on the island. Only ever sharing small bits. Such as things he did with his mother. His obsession with some noodle dish named ramen, even after the Uzumaki's introduction to the foods of the world. Seeing him like this was new. It also showed to Diana that even keeping to himself as he had been, Naruto regarded Diana with some modicum of respect. That he was putting his trust in her. That he was wanting to open up finally about his family's death. Not answering, Diana stood from her seat on the coffee table. She moved about the room, grabbing objects as she did. Some knick-knack on the bookshelf across from the sofa, going to the conjoined kitchenette and taking the bread knife from the knife rack, fruit bowl on the dining table. Diana removed a random grape from the bunch in the bowl, and lastly the Amazon returned to the coffee table. Which she stood upon to unscrew the light bulb above them. Having hold of everything, Diana stepped over to the door to her room and disposed of everything inside of it. If Naruto wanted to share with her his story, she would make sure only she heard it. Batman thought himself clever installing those listening devices in her apartment, but she knew where it all was from the start. Diana had only left them until now because there was no harm in leaving them until now. Now when Naruto was finally reaching out for a helping hand. Naruto watched her do it. He didn't know why Diana did that, but shrugged. The items belonged to Diana, hers to do with as she pleased. The blonde just waited for her to sit down again. On the coffee table once more, the Amazon looked Naruto in the eye and nodded. You can trust me. Nodding back, Naruto took a deep breath. Okay then. To start. The start I believe would be why we, the Uzumaki, were on the island. The truth being we weren't trapped there. We were imprisoned. Imprisoned for enslaving gods. Recognized. Wonder Woman, 0 to 3. Honestly. Who thought it a good idea to program the League computer that runs the Zeta tubes to speak with a feminine voice? Diana had not a clue, but her best guess would have to be some combined effort by the Flash and Green Arrow. They were the only two she knew who would think to convince the scientists who maintain the Zeta technology to make that change. But that would have to be something Diana dealt with another time. Surveying the interior of the cave, Diana caught sight of Batman once more sitting at his massive computer, tapping away at the keyboard completely engrossed in his work. Paying her rival no attention. Walking closer, Diana gripped the bag in her hand tighter. Its mechanical contents jingling as she moved. Stepping up next to Batman, Wonder Woman examined what the Dark Knight is currently working on. From the looks of it, some businessman by the name of Oswald Cobblepot. Illegal gambling ring, smuggling of all sorts of exotic goods and contraband. Though with what Diana can see none of it can be connected to the man himself, even if Batman appears convinced there is a connection. Alfred said I was here. A statement of fact, not a question from Batman as he continued to tap away at his console. Not even glancing at her. Alfred had of course told her. All she had to do was ask, such a kindly man the Pennyworth is. She'll just have to remember to bring some of Epian's special tea leaves back for the man next time she visited Themyscira. Knowing he didn't expect a reply in regards to his statement, Diana moved on to why she was here. Lifting the bag she held, Wonder Woman placed it on the countertop next to Batman's main console. Diana let go and out spilled the wires, parts and other gadgetry pieces. The broken parts of the items Diana had grabbed in her apartment. The items the Amazon knew to be Batman's listening devices. Batman glanced at the pile of mechanical junk. Then returning to his work. Did you have to break them? Diana smirked in amusement. Batman didn't show it, but he was annoyed at the destruction of his toys. I had to get the point across. And what point would that be? The Dark Knight queried. It felt as if he raised an eyebrow behind his cowl as he actually diverted attention to Diana. Leave Naruto alone. I will no longer condone your need to constantly surveil my ward. He watched as Diana crossed her arms, staring down her nose and almost daring him to challenge her on that, an eyebrow of her own quirked for emphasis. A habit of hers Batman had picked up on for when she was resolute about something and refused to budge about it. To most people, such a stance would be intimidating. To the Caped Crusader, it was just another Friday. When did he become your ward? This is an interesting development. What is equipment picked up of their conversation several days ago, Naruto was endeavoring to use his powers as a hero as the boy had said, seeking Diana's aid in doing so. Then just before the Uzumaki was about to reveal the story of his family, Diana removed his surveillance bugs. Whatever the blonde had told Diana, it was enough to convince her to take a more protective role over the boy. Naruto has entrusted me with knowledge of his family, as I'm sure you know. It is a trust I refuse to betray from here on out. As such, he is under my care. Wonder Woman held her stance. Batman narrowed his eyes at that. We still don't know the sort of threat he poses. So little is known about him, I refuse to take the chance that he's genuine until more is known. Diana scoffed. This is your paranoia talking, Bruce. I know now, I know that which you want to know. Or do you have so little trust in me that my word, that Naruto is just a young boy trying to survive in a world that is new to him, does me saying that mean nothing to you? His powers make him dangerous. Avoiding the question and providing an admittedly weak excuse. Entirely unlike Batman, but he felt he had to say something to continue to defend his point. Even if he's the only one to see it that way. Then I am dangerous too, if that is the case. What makes you deem an innocent child a threat and not me? Is it simply because you know me? No, you don't think of me as such. Because I have proven that my intentions are good with my actions. As will Naruto if given the chance. HN. Is Batman's only reply. A simple grunt all he could supply, as there's nothing he could say at this point in time to persuade Wonder Woman differently. Admittedly, she had a point. Wonder Woman is a threat because of her power too, yet Batman doesn't consider her one, as like she said, her actions over the many years had seen to that. Hands on hips and standing a little taller, Diana appeared satisfied with getting Batman to be unable to argue against her. Now to move on to her next bit of business with the Dark Knight. Removing a piece of paper from a pocket located somewhere on her person, the Amazon passed it to him. He wishes to help people. I will help him. And I'm now asking you, like Naruto, to put your trust in me. Unfolding the slip of paper, Batman perused what it contained. Naruto believes he does not need something to wear, but I have convinced him that it would be better for him to not have to replace his shirt every time he is shot at. Diana explained. I got him to write down some things he'd be comfortable with. It would be appreciated if you could have it made. Why should I? Batman had no reason to do as she asked. To prove yourself wrong. Diana said, hand on a cocked hip as she gave the Caped Crusader a look. Or because I'll tell Alfred of your trysts with the one known as Catwoman. Directing his Batglare, Robin has the patent pending at Wonder Woman, Batman growled out, I told you that in confidence. And I am using it as a threat to get what I want. How is that different to how you operate here, in Gotham? HN. He just grunted again. Nothing he could say can refute that. Batman's head twitched imperceptibly, picking up on the faint sound of footsteps that could be heard from higher in the cave. Must be Alfred coming down with food. Batman though couldn't risk the chance of Wonder Woman's threat actually being a bluff. Fine, I'll have it ready in a few days. Smiling triumphantly, Diana turned on her heels and made her way to the Zeta tubes. I'll trust you on this. To show him how to be better. But the moment he steps out of it, I'll be there to make him step back in line. Last warning issued. The Caped Crusader turned back to the computer, rapidly tapping away at the keyboard. Working out the next move and proving the Penguin's involvement in the crimes he's investigating. Wonder Woman didn't reply, simply waving over her shoulder at Batman. Recognized. Wonder Woman, 0-3. The Zeta tube announced Diana's exit from the cave. Despite what he said, Batman really hoped Wonder Woman could prove his worries are misplaced about the boy she had taken in. People with powers would always be a problem in the world, but people that used those powers to help others would always be welcome, so long as their reason for doing so was altruistic. The thing that frustrated Batman to no end though is how trusting of everyone his closest friends are. And that's what he always worried about. The Batman they naively believe in the good that exists in others. That if given the chance people would choose to do the good thing. Sadly, Batman didn't have the same kind of faith in others as they did. There are times he wished he did, it would make the world a much brighter place. Dealing with the darkness in others is where Batman thrived. Which he had found the best way to manage, manipulate and control it was by knowing the secrets that others tried to hide. To know how they would act, react and their general thinking. To predict what they may do. A person's history is just as important to know them as knowing who they are now. There have been plenty of times Batman has seen when someone's past has gotten the better of them. Arkham Asylum's many guards can attest to that. With Naruto, he's a complete unknown. What little they do know has been learned from the blonde's own testament and what Batman had observed with his now destroyed surveillance bugs. The family of people isolated on an island. A striking resemblance to Wonder Woman, who herself is from an isolated island, with the big difference being Naruto's home had been destroyed and can now be accessed by anyone, not that there's anything left worth going there for. His powers have been a large focus on the file he's been compiling about the Uzumaki. Immense strength that only seems to increase with each display of its use. Source unknown, but able to generate lightning much like Captain Marvel, who Batman had gotten Superman to ask help the Uzumaki learn to control that ability. Not telling the others that it was in an effort to learn the source of his abilities. It would have been suspicious if the Dark Knight had been the one to ask. Recently Naruto has displayed the capability of flight, and the satellite Batman has tasked with monitoring the Uzumaki's movements has picked up the blonde with Captain Marvel, chancing upon a robbery in progress. Batman can now add some degree of enhanced speed to his list of Naruto's powers. There hasn't been an opportunity to access any skills since Naruto hasn't been in a situation yet where he has had to display if he's had any combat training. Though it had been recorded that Naruto likes to put himself through various exercises during the time he studies. More from habit than any need to keep in shape thanks to his powers keeping his body in prime condition. Which is what suggests to Batman possible martial skill. And with the little information he had regarding Naruto's history, Batman is vexed at what to do. Choosing to return to this line of thought at a later date. Batman rose from his chair, cape swishing behind him as he struts toward the Batmobile just in time for an aging man in a very fine suit to reach the bottom of the stairs connecting the cave to the building above. In the man's hand a full silver serving platter. Jumping into the driver's seat, Batman started flicking switches and pressed a button, causing the vehicle's engine to roar to life. "I'll be back late, Alfred. Tell Robin he can have the night off. Also inform Lucius to clear his schedule, I have something I need him to work on." But that the hatch slid shut and the wheels squealed as the Batmobile peeled off, disappearing down the cave branch its parking station was coupled to. Alfred just stood there for a moment. His immaculately combed mustache twitching just a little. "Yes, sir. I will. Such a shame the food I slaved away over a hot stove making will go to waste." Walking over to a nearby rubbish bin, Alfred made a show of lifting the dome off the platter and using it to sweep the nothing that was on the silver into the bin. Such a waste. Washington, D.C. May 25. 11:42 EDT. When Naruto had asked Diana to help him use his powers to help others, he had fully expected to be punching the other powered people that use their powers to commit crimes or even rescuing people from certain danger. Reuniting daughters with their fathers. Sons with their mothers. Yet here he is, along with Diana, at some construction site, using their enhanced strength to help move giant concrete slabs into place as a wall for some building. Gritting his teeth, Naruto carefully lowered the slab he held above his head and onto the ground, with a small dust cloud picking up around him, under the guidance of the construction workers around him, where he held it vertically while they secured it in place with their tools. "It should be secure now. You can let go." He heard one of the workers call out. Doing as instructed, Naruto released his hold on the slab and stepped back. Watching as more workers shuffled around using more tools to attach the slab he put down to the one Diana had just placed perpendicular to it. Another worker, a portly balding man with a hard hat labeled site manager, walked up to Naruto and clapped him on the shoulder. "Good work, kid." Shaking his hand to somehow shake away the feeling of slapping what felt like the wall Naruto just put up, the site manager gave the blonde a grin and a thankful nod. "With the last of those walls up, we're now weeks ahead of schedule." "Thanks heaps, kid." Not sure how to respond, Naruto just silently nodded as the man walked away towards a group of workers gathered around some blue papers. Feeling a little awkward at all the waves and calls of thanks he was receiving from other workers, Naruto began to pat the dust covering his new clothes Wonder Woman had gotten for him to distract himself. First shaking the layer of dust off of the white-headed cape he now sported, not only being in Naruto's opinion an awesome look, but also it was a nod towards the first person he could call a friend in this wide world, Captain Marvel. Though if asked, Naruto would swear it was only for the former reason. Deeming the dust sufficiently removed from the hood he had up, Naruto began wiping his hand down his front. Now covered in a black short-sleeved shirt with a dark red chest plate sewed onto it, which he had been told was made of some difficult-to-damage material named Kev something. Honestly, Naruto didn't pay attention, he was more concerned with how stupidly form-fitting the top is. He'll have to rectify that later. He may want to help others, but if that means relinquishing small comforts, Naruto was not having that. He'll end up going through a lot of shirts, but it's a worthy sacrifice. The only good thing about the shirt is the cloth half mask that's a part of the shirt. So, along with the hood, it hid everything about his face except for his eyes. Even though he saw no problem with people knowing his name, Diana was adamant that he hide his identity. Something about living his life. Naruto didn't think it worth remembering. Seeing his shirt was clean enough, Naruto wiped the dust from his black pants. Thankfully they were not form-fitting. And Naruto absolutely loved these boots his pants were tucked into. They're red as well and came to halfway up his shin, but they were the most comfortable shoe he had ever worn. And that's not saying much, considering he only ever used to wear sandals. The boot itself was more like a slip-on sole and was pulled up to cover the bottom of his pants. All held together by the red belt around his waist. Naruto stopped patting himself down when he noticed Wonder Woman walking towards him. Remind me why we have done this. I expected more action. Which is true. As part of his studies of learning the English language, Naruto had watched many television shows and news segments. Thankfully the TV remote was simple enough to operate, yet everything he watched that included Wonder Woman or the other superheroes showed them fighting some threat. As a result, that's what Naruto had expected when Diana had told him to suit up in these new clothes and that he was going to shadow her today. He didn't expect to be helping construction workers raise the walls for some building. Expecting more action. Like what? Wonder Woman asked rhetorically, an eyebrow raised in curiosity to what Naruto would say in return. The blonde flailed his hands, not sure how to respond. I do not know. I thought we would be punching gorillas or destroying death rays. This feels rather mundane compared to what I have seen you do on the TV. Diana sighed at hearing that. TV. Of course, it was TV. It had even gotten to someone like Naruto, who had gone all his life without it until recently. Not everything we do is about fighting or the end of the world. The news outlets only broadcast that which gets them attention. So, they don't show things like this. Which is just as, if not more important than situations like those. Confused, Naruto furrowed his brow, looking to Diana. How is this more important? What is this building even for? Pursing her lips, Wonder Woman thought of the best way to answer him. Naruto wanted to help others. He wanted to use his power in ways that achieves that goal. But like most his age, all he sees is the glory of saving lives. He had been sold on the fact that he'd be putting his life on the line for a great cause. Simply because that's all he sees. That's all he's shown. The glory, the wins, all the feel-good parts. Not knowing that there is more to the cause than that. That the cause is more than about fighting the bad guys. More than foiling a villain's plans and destroying their death rays. Floating off the ground, Diana beckoned Naruto to follow her, which he did as they rose in the air until Naruto could see the Hall of Justice in the distance. Look around us, tell me what you can see. Doing as he was bid, Naruto swept his gaze over what was now below them. Buildings. Cars, people. He looked to Diana for clarification, he could see the look on her face. Whatever answer she was looking for, that was not it. You're not wrong. But that's also not what I meant. Look closer. More specifically at the people, at the buildings. What situation they're in, the state they are in. Diana swept her arm below them, towards the neighborhood they were floating above. Paying more attention to the things Diana wants, Naruto could see the state of the buildings. A lot of them seemed to be in a more decrepit state. Cracks in the walls, graffiti where there wasn't. He took notice of many things that also looked to be fixed by the local residents. Of who he can see they weren't exactly living the most upstanding life. A couple of people, from his vantage point in the air, he could see living in cardboard boxes in alleyways. Others were just sitting on the stairs leading up to the buildings. Naruto even sees a number of children that should be in school as he had been told, running around playing some make-believe game. Probably about superheroes based on how a few were using blankets as makeshift capes. It wasn't what you'd call a poor neighborhood, but it could certainly be better. You see it now, right? Diana asked. She can see the look in his eyes. He had seen what she was hoping he would. What we do. What we truly do is provide a service. We are there when our strengths are needed. We are there when things seem bleak. Standing strong. Standing tall. Being something for people to strive towards. And that's the reason behind this building. To provide everyone a chance at something more. To improve their lives, to help them improve their own lives. She had passion about what she spoke about, though Naruto still didn't find himself seeing the point of this. He understood that Diana and the others were symbols. An example of how people should be. Selfless, caring, forgiving. To show people how to be those things instead of greedy, angry and vengeful. In comparison to his life on the island with his family, where everything was done to ensure their survival. Placing the lives of the family as the most important thing. So everyone got along. Now that he thinks of it, Naruto can only assume that was because there was no option except for getting along with each other. The world at large though, placed a huge amount of value on one's wealth, looks, education and popularity. And because of that a society developed that encouraged wealth, good looks and fame, simultaneously putting you down if you didn't fit into certain criteria. And that's where a lot of the negative emotions people feel come from. It's been happening for so long that it's embedded in their societal norms, in their very bodies even, to try to be superior to those around them. Even if it means belittling others. None of which meant much to Naruto, so he didn't understand the significance. Okay. But what is the building? Diana smiled. This is something she was proud of. Something she wholeheartedly stood for. It will be a school. Free to attend and state-of-the-art. Those children you saw will be the future. Living around here their options may become limited either by money, family or something else. But with this school, they will have the chance to achieve more. They will now have the chances that others in the wealthier areas do. They could achieve great things, just like Nia from the story I told you a few days ago. Before they might not have, but now they might grow up to be the scientist or doctor that changes the world. And that is why you do this. To give children hope to be something great. Naruto asks. Contemplating if him asking Diana to help him was for the right reasons now. His family, as he had been taught by the elders of the clan and by his mother, were not what you would call in this society upstanding citizens. Japan, as Naruto had come to learn, was the country his family originated from. Many years ago, his ancestors had done things that had angered many gods of those lands. The Uzumaki had done things that would have had their name go down in history as evil. Had the gods not removed their name from it. If not for the intervention of the gods, banishing them to an island hidden from all view. Forbidden from being accessed or left. Warlords and conquerors would have been the names Uzumaki would have been synonymous with. And Naruto could no longer be proud of that. Which is why he wanted to be a hero. To make the Uzumaki name mean something more. That being an Uzumaki was a good thing. But maybe it didn't matter who someone was, who their family was. So long as you walked your own path. That's why I do this. I fight for a better tomorrow. And fighting comes in many forms. The most impactful fight I believe being this one, the one that changes the world for the better. By helping inspire the people to be better. Diana said. She could see the look in Naruto's eyes. It was similar to the one he had a few days prior. One where he was trying to decide something within himself. Diana grasped Naruto's shoulder to get his focus to be on her. That's my reason. But my reason isn't the only reason. And to some it's not the best. What's important is that you believe in making a change, and that change is for the better. Wanting to be better than your family is a good start, and I believe that you will do great things in time. He kept eye contact with the Amazon for a moment. Can we go back now? They will want us to help with the roof soon. With that Naruto turned and began to float down to the construction site. Thankful for the half mask because his face is flushed with embarrassment from how easy Diana was able to tell what was on his mind. Shaking her head and smiling at his reaction, Diana followed Naruto down to the ground. That was until a crash drew her attention. Not a car crash, but one brought about from a part of a wall being broken down. That wouldn't have been too strange near a building site, except the crash didn't originate from the area. And that's when the ringing of a bell and the whining from an alarm reached her ears. Because of course it couldn't be someone doing some home renovations. Wonder Boy. There's trouble. Diana called down to him, quickly flying at speed towards the source of the alarm. Hearing the ridiculous name Naruto was told he was going to be called when in this costume, the blonde turned back to Diana just in time to see her zoom away. Looking back down at the construction workers who had heard the Amazon shout and were looking up at him, Naruto gave a shrug and a wave before flying away to catch up with the black-haired woman. Quickly catching up, cape flapping in the wind, Naruto looked towards where they were heading. The blonde recognized it as a museum, having learned of them in a tourist pamphlet he had come across a month back. Like many of the building around here, it's made of that concrete stuff. It was large, larger than most of the other buildings around, not in height by how much area it covered. A large glass dome on the roof. Windows that covered from floor to roof were on both the left and right side of the building, and in the middle is a sizable door that the people walk through. The large set of white marble stairs lead up to the door. Or what used to be the door, because now it's a giant hole in the wall. Staying afloat in the air next to Wonder Woman, Naruto observed the situation. The alarm he had heard had now stopped. Just as they arrived, a few of the local police cars skidded onto the scene as well. The main focus for Naruto though, was the person in a ready stance halfway down the stairs. Bits of debris surrounding them. It was a woman. The first thing people would notice about her is the fact she's completely covered in fur, a predominant orange-brown color. Dark brown spots were dotted along her arms and legs, most likely along her back as well. She wore no clothes, so in his examination of the woman Naruto took note of the white fur that was her front torso. He could see her tail swishing behind her, and most importantly Naruto could see the claws on her fingers and toes glinting in the sunlight, some weird figurine held in her right hand. Her last defining trait would be the red hair atop her head, pointed cat ears twitching through the strands at all the sounds around her. The blonde had seen a few around, and this lady distinctly reminded Naruto of a cat. And now being closer, he can feel an energy coming from the cat lady. Having spent more time around Diana, Naruto still not sure why he's able to, realized he can feel the distinct aura of divinity on the woman. Much like the Amazon, she had been empowered by a god. He can tell by the fact this cat lady's aura, while similar, was a lot more dulled in comparison to the Amazon princess, so she must have only been blessed by the one god. Diana on the other hand, Naruto was sure had blessings from multiple deities. But the feel of the cat lady also seemed dark, twisted even. Like someone had tampered with the divine energy used to provide the blessing on the cat lady. Diana wasted no time and flew down to the ground, placing herself at the bottom of the steps. Between the cat lady and the police officers. "Barbara. Stop this." Wonder Woman called out. "This is not you." Barbara just growled upon seeing and hearing the Amazon princess. Sneering at Diana and flashing her teeth, sharp and looking just as deadly as her claws. "Wonder Woman. How many times have I told you? It's Cheetah. And it will be so long as I'm stuck like this. And every time I try to fix it, you're here to stop me." "I'm not trying to stop you, Barbara. You're my friend and I promised to help you." It was true. Her friend, Barbara Ann Minerva, had been a good person. She had helped Diana quite a bit when she had returned to man's world. Barbara's archaeological expertise came in handy for not only finding, but recovering many of the ancient Greek artifacts Diana had dedicated some of her free time to preserving. That was until the incident that turned Barbara into this. But this is the wrong way to go about it. The wrong way. You had every chance to help and you squandered it every time. Cheetah raised a pointed claw at Wonder Woman in anger. "I never squandered it, my friend. You know I can't take you to Themyscira. It's forbidden for outsiders to visit without permission." Diana tried to reason. "It's happened before and you know it. You just refuse to break the rule for me. Unlike your precious Steve Trevor. And you call us friends." Cheetah snarled. Naruto, who had landed on the ground nearer to the police officers, shared a look with said law enforcers. It was silently agreed that they felt weird listening to what felt to be a personal conversation. "We are friends, Barbara. Just return what you took and turn yourself in, we can sort all this out and find help to free you from your curse." Wonder Woman extended a hand, hoping that Cheetah would listen to her and accept the offer. Even though she's refused in all their past encounters. The Amazon still held hope. Cheetah growled once more. "I've listened to you for the last time. You promised to help me, you promised to be there and you weren't. You weren't. And that's why I'm like this. So, I know your help means nothing. But with this." She held up the figurine in her hand, brandishing it like a weapon. Getting a proper look at it showed it's not a figurine at all, but a necklace of some sort with a rather large cat-shaped amulet attached to it. "This necklace, belonging to the first priestess of Bast, shall give me a direct connection to Bast. It will give me power to not only break my curse, but to also get my revenge on you." "Barbara, no." Wonder Woman shouted. She was going to rush forward to stop the cat lady, but Cheetah had already pulled the large gold chain on the necklace over her head. A wave of energy was released from the cheetah's form, forcing the black-haired woman to stay where she was to not be blown away. The energy flowing through Cheetah at the moment seemed to cause her pain, forcing Cheetah to be bent over and hugging herself to try stem the pain racking her body. Another wave of energy exploded from the cat lady's body, her back arching in response. Her mouth open in a scream she can't hear, but all those around her can. Everyone watching can see a small transformation was taking place, the fur on Barbara's body taking on a darker color, becoming a stronger brown color than orange. Her legs, previously human-like with an almost paw shape to her feet, now cracking, breaking and reshaping themselves into more cat-like appendages, the knee now bending backwards and forcing Cheetah to bend forward once more to support herself on all four limbs. Her hair became shaggier, taking a more wild and rough appearance. Cheetah's already pronounced canines became longer, sharper. Her face, which had still boasted human-like feature, morphed to more anthropomorphic traits. Her nose became like the ones seen on cats, her lips changing similarly to accommodate the change in facial features. And finally, the claws on her hands grew into larger ones. Slowly and painfully Cheetah was changing to more closely resemble the animal she was named for. The cops had taken shelter behind the doors of their cars from the intense winds that had picked up in response to the output of energy from Cheetah. Diana dug her heels in and weathered the winds, an arm raised to block potential debris from flying into her face. Naruto was in a similar situation as Diana, using both arms to stop the flying debris from affecting him too much. But his eyes never left Cheetah's changing body. The divinity he had felt from her before. It was amplified, getting stronger the longer the necklace was on her body. Not only that but the energy being released, it was divine as well, and Naruto can feel it purging the corrupt divine energy currently occupying Cheetah's body and replacing it and changing her body. Then it all stopped. Everything just stood still. Absolute silence. No one breathed, no one blinked. Naruto chanced to lower his arms to better see what was now happening. Just in time to see Cheetah crouch lower to the ground. Die. She screamed. Her newly transformed powerful legs tensed before Cheetah shot forward, a crater being left in her wake on the stairs of the museum. Her form becoming a blur as she flew at Diana. The Catwoman collided with Wonder Woman, a grunt of exertion being let out by the Amazon as she used her silver vambraces to block the swipe from Cheetah's new claws, sparks coming from where they met. Wonder Woman pushed back against her attacker, surprised at the increase of speed Cheetah was exhibiting. Nothing she couldn't handle, but it was much faster than anything Cheetah had shown in the past. Diana grunted, gave another push and pushed the cat villain away from her. Flying backwards through the air, Cheetah flipped herself over to regain control and landed on all fours once more. Unable to support her body on two legs due to her changes. Barbara leaped forward again, this time not aiming straight for Diana and instead began dashing around her, attempting to use her newfound speed to confuse Diana. It was working too, Wonder Woman constantly twisting and turning her body to try keep Cheetah within her field of view. To defend against the next possible attack from the feline goddess-empowered villain. With each circle Cheetah made around Wonder Woman, she made to swipe her claws somewhere along the Amazon's body. Yet each time the black-haired was able to react in time to block the attack with her vambraces. Each attack happening in rapid succession, and the police officers, who had now brandished their guns, couldn't find an opening to fire upon the transformed Cheetah. So, they just bided their time behind the safety of their reinforced squad car doors until they had an opening to assist the Amazon. Wonder Woman caught Cheetah on the next attack, throwing her off to the side to get a momentary reprieve from the feline's assault. Following it up by pulling the lasso of truth out. Rolling in the air to righten herself once more, coming to perch against the wall of the museum, Cheetah used the wall as a platform to push forward at a faster speed. Aiming to slice her claws through Diana's neck, only to miss as the black-haired heroine rolled to the side. Having missed her attack, Cheetah resumed her previous tactic. Closing in on Wonder Woman once more, this time making claw swipes in a quick combo. One swipe at Diana's neck, dodged by the brunette stepping back. With the arm extended from the missed attack, Diana moved to wrap the lasso around the arm, but had to abandon that decision to move to block a swipe at her midsection. The sweep kick from Diana led to Cheetah leaping above it and flipping around into an axe kick. Which Wonder Woman blocked by crossing her arms and pushing Cheetah away from her. Finding her footing again, Cheetah raced around on all fours, resorting once more to circling Diana and attacking with quick swipes before retreating. "Stop, Barbara. It's not too late to stop this," Diana shouted, twisting her body to once more block a claw strike aimed for her thighs. Cheetah's way of trying to slow Wonder Woman down and make her open to more attacks. Cheetah stopped to reply. "It is too late. Too late for you." She lunged forward once more, intending to gouge out Diana's eyes this time. Naruto watched this whole time silently. Diana hadn't said she needed help, but he felt so useless standing here doing nothing. He wanted to be a hero to put the skills he had been taught by his family to use in a good way. And here was the perfect chance. Even so, the blonde couldn't just interject. These two had history, stuff they looked like they needed to work through. Wonder Woman watched her fly closer, already bringing her arms up to block this next attack too. It saddened Diana to see the anger in her friend's eyes. To know that Cheetah blames her for the situation she's in, it hurt even. So briefly, for a moment. Diana considered lowering her arms and taking the attack to let Barbara release the hurt and frustration she feels. To lessen the pain her friend felt towards her by suffering through whatever Cheetah may dish out. But she didn't get to think twice about that. For just as Barbara was within swinging distance, she stopped in the air. Her eyes widening at something Diana was not yet aware of. "Bad kitty," was heard from Cheetah's airborne form. Unable to do anything, Cheetah released a pained cry. "Mraow." Diana didn't know Barbara could make such a cat-like noise. The Catwoman was lifted higher into the air, where Diana could now see the previously forgotten Wonder Boy held Barbara by her tail, which he then used to swing her down onto the ground, slamming the feline woman's body down so hard the concrete cratered and cracked around her. Naruto had decided he didn't like staying idle in the end. Keeping hold of the tail, Naruto used the tail to yank Cheetah towards him once more, pulling her into an uppercut that had her jaw rattling. Naruto repeated the action 2 more times, the third punch knocking a tooth loose from Cheetah's very bruised jaw. With one more pull on the tail he held in his hand, Naruto brought Cheetah into an open palm that led to him choke, slamming her into the concrete, where it created a bigger crater than before upon impact. Cheetah found herself in a great bit of pain, her jaw felt like it was going to fall off from those punches, while her back was throbbing from being slammed into the ground a second time. She had no idea who this brat was, but he'd pay for getting in the way of her revenge. Cheetah attempted to rise, to force the brat off of her but he held steady, applying more pressure down on her neck and making it hard for her to breathe. You dang be brat. Cheetah managed to strangle out. Both hands around the hooded blonde's wrist to try pry his hand off, though no matter how much she strained it wouldn't move. Seeing as Naruto now had Cheetah subdued, Diana walked close enough to pat Naruto on the shoulder and to look down on the defeated woman. Thank you Wonder Boy. I appreciate the help. Naruto glanced to Diana, nodding his head in return. Not taking his attention away from the feline for too long. He can feel her straining against the stranglehold he has on her feline-like legs pushing against his torso, but he didn't budge an inch. And Naruto knows if he lets up for a single second Cheetah would use the chance to escape and continue her assault. Honestly Naruto didn't know why Diana had let the woman attack her. He knew the Amazon was capable of stopping the woman whenever she wanted. He wanted to ask her why, but chose to keep quiet for now as he watched her crouch down next to Cheetah. Barbara, I wish it wasn't this way. You're my friend, to see you like this pains me because I see the pain you're in. This wasn't the way to mitigate that pain. If you would just accept that I only want to help you, this could have been different. Wonder Woman reached a hand out to brush the hair out of Cheetah's face, only to remove the hand quickly, lest it be bitten off when Cheetah snapped at the appendage with the little mobility she had. Never. I will never accept help from you again. You promised to be there when I needed you, but you never came. You failed me. You say these things because you can't live with that failure. And I won't give you the satisfaction of relieving yourself of the burden of knowing you failed. Cheetah cried out, resuming her struggle to free herself of Naruto's grip. I'm sorry Barbara, truly sorry you think that. But whether you want it or not, I will help you. You still don't get it. You could have always helped, freed me from this curse, but you were never willing to pay the price to provide it. If Naruto had thought before it was weird to listen to their conversation, this was downright awkward. They were talking like he wasn't even here. It was made even worse by the fact he was currently holding one of them down by the neck. Feeling her struggle once more in his grip, Naruto slightly adjusted his hold on Cheetah's throat. Shall I break her neck? Naruto interjected. His mother had always said he lacked any sort of tact. No sense for subtlety. Hearing him got both women to look at him for vastly different reasons. Cheetah stopped her struggling for a moment to stare at the hooded hero, fear creeping into her expression. Diana in comparison pursed her lips, disappointed Naruto would say something like that. It would appear she would need to instruct him on the importance of why life, every life, was important. Where'd you find this brat Diana? Bit violent, isn't he? Cheetah questioned. The Amazon didn't reply to the former archaeologist. Instead for the umpteenth time she grabbed Naruto by the shoulder, getting him to look her in the eye. No, Wonder Boy. We do not kill. Barbara is misguided and deserves the chance to right her wrongdoings. And she can't do that if you break her neck. Right, sorry. Naruto averted his eyes. Slightly ashamed now that Diana had admonished him for suggesting to kill the woman. He couldn't help it though, it's how he was trained by his family. From a young age he had been taught to not waste time needlessly in a fight, that every wasted move was another opportunity for the enemy they were training to fight to use to kill them instead. It had been ingrained in Naruto's and the rest of his family's minds that it was a kill or be killed situation when it came to the ones that had trapped them on the island. And if the Uzumaki were to ever free themselves, it would be after losing many lives on both sides. He had forgot though that he wanted to be better than his family and ancestors. That he had asked Diana for help in changing his ways and making a new life for himself, a new way of life for future Uzumaki. Instead he had fallen back on second nature teachings and nearly perpetuating the teachings of his family that he was wanting to distance himself from. Seeing the regret fill Naruto's eyes filled Diana with relief. Much like herself, Naruto had been raised with martial skills that oriented around ending the life of the opponent. Unlike her though, Naruto hadn't been taught that killing wasn't the answer, that it was something you did if left with no other option. Much the opposite in fact. What he had told her of his family, they had taught him that if they didn't kill their enemy, they would be the ones that were dead. It looked like the most important lesson she shall have to impart upon him was the value every life held. It's alright. Life isn't something trivial to throw away, every life means something, just remember that okay? Diana said. Naruto nodded to that. What do we do now then? He questioned. Standing up to her full height, Wonder Woman looked down at Cheetah. Contemplating what they should do. First we need to return the necklace you stole. Okay. Was all Naruto said. Returning the necklace means getting it off of Cheetah. Easy. Naruto reached down and grabbing the necklace by the amulet, no compunctions about it resting between Cheetah's furry buxom. Ripping it from her neck. The scream immediately followed, Cheetah's body jerked violently in his grip, spasms overtaking her body as the divine energy started flowing out from her, no longer being contained inside of her by the necklace. Before when the energy was entering and transforming Cheetah, it was as if they were standing next to a tornado. Now, it was like a deflating balloon, a stiff breeze that made his cape waft around. The screams increased in intensity, the cracking sound returned and Wonder Woman and Wonder Boy watched as Cheetah slowly and quite painfully from the sounds of it, returned to her previous appearance. Naruto let go of the woman, stepping over to be next to his sensei. Is she his sensei? Naruto can only assume so. He had asked her to teach him how to be a hero, taking a position next to her. Both of them unable to do anything except watch, as they had no idea how to help. You just had to rip it off. Wonder Woman said. It is not like I could ask her to take it off, she would claw my face off the moment I let go. Naruto retorted. Fair enough. Wonder Woman agreed. It took another few moments for the screaming to end, but when it did it left Cheetah curled up in the fetal position. Shivering, and was that crying they heard? Looking closer, Naruto looked at the Catwoman's face. Yeah, Cheetah was crying. The Amazon and Uzumaki glanced at each other. Now what? Naruto asked. How do you deal with a crying woman anyway? We help her. That's what. I promised to help Barbara, whether she wanted it or not. And I intend to keep that promise to my friend lost in her own darkness. With that, Wonder Woman bent down and gently brought Cheetah into a hug. But the power having left her body and the excessive amount of pain, Barbara didn't have the strength to refute Wonder Woman's embrace. We're not friends. And I hate you. She whispered. Falling unconscious moments after. Wonder Woman only sighed at Barbara's last words while awake. This was going to be a long journey, but her friend was worth it. She turned to Naruto to issue some instructions. Leave the necklace with the police, then meet me back home. I will make sure Barbara gets set up with the help she needs. Yes, sensei. Naruto said, floating over towards the police to do as instructed. Raising an eyebrow at being called sensei, Diana focused on Cheetah. She would have to be held in Belle Reve Penitentiary simply because of the crimes she had committed. In the meantime, Diana would consult Zatara and possibly Kent Nelson on ways she could give the help she promised to her old friend. Beginning to fly away herself in the direction of the Hall of Justice. Where she'll be held until the authorities can be involved. The thought struck her before she got too far, so Wonder Woman turned back to Naruto. And don't talk to the reporters. The end. Thanks for watching, also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.